I was thrilled to receive the invitation to attend this convening last year, although I felt uncertain about commenting on the proposed topic as I had worked in mostly white arts institutions and movement forms. I realize now that the word audience may not apply as directly for me, but community does, in that the community I curate for is contemporary dance artists of color.
Public forums on the state of the field take on race and diversity questions as central topics rather than a bullet point in a list of things that should be covered in the season. But for those of us who have been thinking about this stuff already, who live this stuff, the sudden attention to practicing anti-racism feels a little untrustworthy sometimes. Will it have longevity? Will it last past the next news cycle that makes some of us sit and worry about the lives of our family members and ourselves?
Last year, in preparation for this gathering, I had to look back. So I run a grant program that gives money to contemporary performing artists. It's about 30 years old. And it was explicitly established and designed to support artists of color and artists working in non-mainstream practices. In preparing for this conversation last year, I had to look back at how the demographics looked over the last 10 or 12 years. And it was a very bleak picture. We were failing. I was failing. And I was failing because I was operating out of white privilege and racial bias.
But then there's transparency both in that process and that acknowledgement that if that part were not a part of the process and all you did was produce the thing, then there's still a question of, well, whose thing is it? How did it happen and how did it get there? So I think it's that kind of behind the scenes piece that's the business that I both heard you speak.
White artists, predominantly white institutions, white curators have been appropriating aesthetics and cultural tropes from people of color forever. It's not out of some penance that we should cede space to artists of color. No, it's because we must honor the source of so many of the aesthetics and forms and techniques that we love.
I have a dream, I said. Well, it's more of a, like the man. Like our man said. Well, it is more than a projet de cœur, a project of the heart, to be incubated within Haiti's LGBTI community. Next summer, I'm envisioning an embodied and creative workshop with members of Haiti's queer community around my Creole translation of Haitian American poet and playwright Assoto Saint's 1989 choreo play, New Love Song.
For me, I feel like programming is really about creating frameworks by which people can make work and move work through stages of development and then have a container by which they can bring that work to audiences.
You were born a fire sign, red like your father and mouthy like me. At your naming ceremony, the priest wanted to call you Shango Olokun. I just sucked my teeth and fastened my seatbelt for an 18-year ride. Firewater. Firewater.
I find that as contemporary artists, our work, and I include myself sometimes, often misses a spiritual religious dynamic that is essential to connecting to and with Black people. And that's the way it goes. So anybody who's wondering, where's the Black audience? If it's not education, it's the spiritual institutions. And that doesn't necessarily mean Christianity, but if you don't touch those territories, you will be in the house alone.
Because we wanted to work in cross-generations, because I felt like I was curating an absence. I was trying to prove something that didn't happen. Like, what did the losses of mentors and role models and muses, a huge generation of those, what effect did that have on work that's being made specifically by queer artists today and queer artists of color? So
the artist was colorful and full of color. The artist had brown skin and it was beautiful. It was wise and in love with the sun. The artist's heart yearned for the moon, so the artist came to be known as a girl. Her name was Dee.
So this idea of thriving, this idea of whole humanity, and this idea of cultivating the folks who will support the work. So part of the vision that I have that grew out of this conversation is we talked about something called
in the vein of sort of achievement levels or management levels in most institutions, I was like, okay, so throughout my purpose life world, I've always been about what new words can I use that are more clearly articulating what I'm talking about. So we came up with sojourners as a way to name clients, but I was like, I don't like this whole clients thing. I was like, they're taking a journey with us. Boom, sojourners.
I wrote something that I had written before I came around centering. Like centering is a practice. So how do we keep centering ourselves, centering what's important, recentering, so that I don't think that the inertia of the larger system that we find ourselves in is going to do that work for us.
From Mr. Houston to Nia, which is an intergenerational conversation around how do we really embody and practice purpose, is a great trajectory for me. And I mean, it's a lot. I just have these kind of surface level tinglings and like, yes, we start here, yes, we end here, yes, that all makes sense. And then at the in-between moments of really teasing out and saying that, you know, this is explicitly about healing and reclaiming space, reclaiming body. I mean, I'm just like, I'm overwhelmed.
So much of white systems of domination in art making have been about serving the form. So that's a way to keep other people excluded. Well, you know, you're making good postmodern work, and so you're serving the form, so then people are taken out of it. It's like, you don't make art for form, you make art for people. So then how do you recenter people?